Now, I've got a few things I want to say. First of all, we have Dolly. Is Dolly Indigo Star? Is she going to be on this evening? In which case, tomorrow's event is going to start a bit later. In fact, the doors are going to open at 10 a.m.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so you get a bit of a lie-in tomorrow morning.
You get a lie-in tomorrow.
We got one of tomorrow's speakers this evening. We've got a bit of a late night, but we've still got time to go to the pub and if anyone wants to go sky watching, things like that. Also, do please hang around because, of course, we are going to have the Bases Film Festival Awards where the winners of the best movies, according to our team of judges, will receive one of the beautiful trophies, bronze hands, as designed by Miriam Janssen. And there's a few other things I want to mention as well. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. This is what we're going to have now is just to mention is we're going to have a Q&A at the end of the next speaker's event. Okay, so you will get a chance to ask the next speaker some questions. But I'm not going to introduce the next speaker. What we're going to talk about right now is very, very important. The next speaker is a keynote. This is really cutting edge, ladies and gentlemen. This is as important as it gets. And so we have a special introduction. What I'm going to do now is introduce you to Sarah Adams, who's a big friend of the Bases Project. Oh, I'm going to... All right. We're going to do this. We're having a little bit of a foursome here. I'm going to hand this over to Miles.
Okay, Lee, this is very important. Everything's very, very important. The reason for this is I met Dr. Robert Duncan at the Super Soldier Summit, along with Sarah and Max, and the kind of material that Dr. Duncan spoke then was absolutely incredible, and he has more to come. But Sarah, you're sort of in the team, so that's why we have Dr. Robert Duncan here. So if you hold that microphone and introduce Dr. Robert Duncan.
Everybody, please welcome Dr. Robert Duncan. I'm going to go ahead and give a briefing of what he's going to speak about. And that would be right here, right?
Yes, it's changed a little bit, but
it's changed a little bit, okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so Dr. Robert Duncan will be speaking about human augmentation, engineering, evolution for mankind. Dr. Robert Duncan will be speaking on Saturday and Sunday with 2 different presentations. His lectures will focus on his research interests, which include creating can you go ahead?
Manchurian candidates and super spies.
Using cybernetic hive minds as well as no-touch torture tactics. That's very interesting. He exposes the mind control research atrocities being done on the human race in order to improve government techniques.
Yes.
This would be amazing, interesting and amazing.
Well, I changed it a little bit. I decided to put a positive spin on cyborging the human race and transhumanism. So it's exactly the opposite of the last speaker.
I do remember last time listening to
So, and I talk so often about the dark side, torture, and how to behaviorally modify human beings, that I thought I would put a little positive twist on it. But there is a harbinger, a warning for humankind in my next lecture. And this is just to enlighten people where the human race is going. I mean, this is definitely happening. There's no way to stop it. But there are some positives that come out of this.
I agree. Out of everything, there are some positives.
Yes.
It's definitely to help humanity somewhat evolve in some way. I mean, it's a bit like a school here, isn't it?
That's right. Well, thank you for the introduction. And I'll get started with the presentation. Thank you, Sarah. Can you put up the first slide, please? Oh, there we go. So when I started to create this presentation, I always do new material. I hate to repeat myself, and that's why I write books. Said once, read it. It's just easier for me that way. So these are new presentations, and Miles invited me out here, and he said it's going to be on cyborging. And Cyborging, the basic definition is cybernetic organism. So it's transforming human beings into partially machines. Now, does that necessarily mean metal or electronic circuits? No, it doesn't. And as we go through this presentation, I'll explain that. But let me talk a little bit more about myself before I go on. So I have many degrees, studied all my life. Went to work for the Department of Defense, projects for the CIA, Justice Department. And my specialty was really artificial intelligence and robotics. And within artificial intelligence, it's pattern recognition. And that's what the human brain basically does. It filters and it recognizes patterns. So I've worked on a robot, for example, that's called Infant. It's an acronym, but it learns to grasp objects, and it gets better and better at it, and faster. I wrote, along with 2 other people, the artificial intelligence code to track all the submarines around the world. And in fact, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, the last time I was in your country, about 20 years ago, I was worried I couldn't get through customs, 2 days ago, I went to a couple of your secret bases, worked with the Royal Navy, NATO, and it was, there was a bug in our software that they sent me over to fix, and I'm just kind of rambling, telling a story. I get there in the command and control center, working on the code, trying to find the bug, and soon there were tracks everywhere in the command and control center, and I think I screwed up. I did something wrong. They're like, no. This time of year is when all the Soviet subs move. Those are accurate tracks. So I felt pretty good about myself. I've worked on technologies such as inner-city gunshot sniper fire to triangulate on the sound waves. A lot of like fingerprint recognition, voice transformation. How do you fool somebody on the phone? And in fact, this was used in the Gulf War. They called up the generals, used voice transformation so it sounded like there are other generals giving orders to the commanders in the field, and they fooled them where to go. But voice identification is very common, especially with your GCHQ or, back home we call the NSA. The technologies go on, and, I was lucky. I was just a scientist. I enjoy just working on high-end technologies. And, so, but I ended up getting a conscience. And I was working on EEG-controlled robots. And all that means is electroencephalograph reading the brainwaves off of human beings and learning to control things, like robots, go left, right, forward, back. But I saw how this technology could be abused. I don't consider myself a whistleblower per se. Other people call me that. But there are very bad things going on, at least in the United States with the CIA, with torture and interrogation. Now, they've improved their methods. It can all be done wirelessly now. So you can insert maximum pain into a human being. And maybe it's for interrogation, for example. And tomorrow I'll talk a little bit more about that and cybernetics, cybernetic hive minds. But that was just kind of give you a sample of my background. I've also been an international consultant for business. Not very interesting. So let me move on. I hit spacebar. Oh, yeah, here we go. So I want to start off with a quote by one of my idols. You've all heard of Albert Einstein. A human being is a part of the whole, called by us the universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings, as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our own personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circles of compassion, to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature and its beauty. I love that quote. And what he's trying to say is the sense of self is a delusion. That we're born as babies and we develop an ego and we think we're separate from the entire universe. We have this sense of self. It's a delusion. So even pronouns, you, me, they're false categorizations when you have the more abstract and bigger viewpoint. And this can be even proven diving down, going in the reverse direction. People with epilepsies in the 1950s, 60s would have their brain, the two halves of the brain, split in half, and they functioned as one human being, even though the two hemispheres were no longer communicating with each other. And you can also see this with individuals with multiple personalities. The sense of self is a complete delusion. And I think that was my main point there. So this presentation is going to be sort of on the philosophy of transhumanism. And I want to kind of show you that this has been going on forever. There's nothing new. It's happening faster, and so it scares people. But we have been transforming ourselves for a long time. What are tools? You know, an extension of the hand. Are cars or houses part of our extension? We use different language to describe it. But it's really part of your being. Is an implanted tooth, for example, part of you? Is it transhumanism? What is it? I mean, we think of these as benign things, but really what we're struggling with is the mind-body duality. We have a mind and a biological robot body, the best tool you'll ever use. And it's hard for us to grasp that. Are your fingernails or hair really part of you just because they grew out of you? And so I'm going to get into a few examples in nature that will show you that this has been a long-going evolution in culture, and that we should not be so scared of these additions to our physical being. And technology, if you think about it, there are only a few species, apes. They actually can teach their young to crack walnuts, coconuts with rocks. Now that's a learned behavior. They can also dig for termites by licking a stick, and they can teach their young how to get food that way. But generally, most animals don't teach their young anything. They're all inbred. They're all genetic programming. So technology is a life form that lives through human minds. And we just happen to be the smartest creatures on Earth that we're advancing this at a very rapid rate. So let me talk about these abstract ideas. You know, there's an ant hill, ant colonies. Look at the structures they build. But what's interesting is biologists don't really look at individual ants. They consider that an organism, and that the ants are just cells. And you can do the analogy that human beings were just made of cells in part. They can be replaced, they can be regenerated. It's an organism. There's a beehive, similar thing. They weren't taught by their youngsters how to make a beehive. This is behavior that is pre-programmed into their neural structure and their genetics. And another example is a bird's nest, for example. They don't know how to make a bird's nest when they're born. They just intuitively know. So the question is, are they construction or part of the organism and species? Are the cells of your body part of a colony? Can a human survive outside of society? And the answer is kind of no. Obviously, the people in the International Space Station, you know, they have done a pretty good job. But there was this experiment by a Harvard professor called the biosphere. And they did it twice, and they wanted to see if humans can survive in an enclosed, encapsulated space with food, plants, you know, what you would expect to help humans survive. And it turns out, no, they couldn't. The one thing that they got wrong was that we're symbiotic creatures with the Earth. We need bacteria, for example, in our colons. It helps process food. And without that, you will die. And so we are part of the Earth, and you have to supplement it, I guess, if you're in space, in order to survive. So I'm hoping to generate thought and questions within you. Where does the definition of body begin or end? What is your body? And, you know, I couldn't come up with a good answer. So here are some funny pictures. So there's a long history in many cultures. So where's my laser point? Okay, a long history in many cultures. You guys probably know this guy here. So in China, and they've stopped the practice, but they used to bind the feet, causing these weird deformities that the women could barely walk, but it was considered beautiful. And similarly, here in Ethiopia, that's the lip plates, you know, sliced, exerted, extended, is considered a form of beauty. Now, is this cyborging? I don't know, but it's body modification, and we've been doing it for a long time. And here's an extreme example of, I forget which country that's from, that they stretch the necks. And then if you take off those rings, they'll break their neck. And I don't know if that's still practiced. Now, you might want to say maybe there's reason behind it, okay? Practical reasons other than cultural acceptance. Is there an analogous modification of the mind? Well, you might think, well, that's why people go to finishing schools and learn etiquette, which I must say the English people are more polite than Americans with that long shit. So is, you know, what is this transformation that is going on in the human race? Now, your typical idea of cyborg is, this is an image from the Terminator, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and, you know, it comes from a future time, but it's actually not that far off. Let me read you a definition of that I got from Wikipedia of what a cyborg is. And one can argue that the this is the end goal of human augmentation, a perfect machine that can live forever and withstand temperatures, go to other planets, have better eyes than we do, and is stronger, and etc. So the term cyborg is not the same thing as bionics, and often applied to an organism that has restored function or enhanced ability due to the integration of some artificial component or technology that relies on some sort of feedback. While cyborgs are commonly thought of as mammals, which means they have to have something related to Earth natural species, they might also conceivably be any kind of organism, and the term cybernetic organism, and that's what cyborg stands for, has been applied to networks such as road systems, corporations, and governments. It's an abstract term. The term can also apply to microorganisms, which are modified to perform at higher levels than their unmodified counterparts. And then it is hypothesized that cyborg technology will form a part of the future human evolution. And I don't see any way to stop it. Let's move on. So back in the day, I worked on a project called the Soldier 2000 project. Obviously, had to have been before 2000. And we wired up soldiers and people in hospitals. We used guinea pigs. And it was to collect all their vital systems, and track them, where they were, what their heart rate is, their breathing, their stress levels, mental states, and et cetera like that. And it was using a wireless body LAN to do it. Now, the technology has advanced much further than that. I also worked on a project in graduate school to make paralyzed people walk again. And it's always a double-edged sword with every technology. And I know I'm repeating myself, but technology is neutral. You can use it for good or evil. Fire is the most basic example. Kills bacteria, cooks food, keeps you warm. But you can also burn down villages. There's always a militarization or weaponization of any technology. So the weaponization, I suppose, of helping paralyzed people walk again are exoskeletons. That there's still a problem with the power source, but 1 ounce of force can lift 300 pounds, but the tactile feedback, this is called haptic feedback, won't even squish a grape. And so you can be as gentle or as strong as you want. And these are obviously suits for the future. Right now, the military uses them for loading heavy objects so the person doesn't get tired of lifting them onto the truck. Let's talk about how we build this cyborg. Well, right now we already have artificial skin that's made of a hexane material that the body doesn't reject. Well, the positive use is for burn victims. You can't really have a skin graft if you have too much of your surface destroyed. So artificial skin, that's great. That's great. And then let me grab my laser pointer again. So this other slide here is showing how they inject cells into a scaffolding, and the cells grow, and the scaffolding kind of goes away. And this is a process to grow organs, bones, many different things that humans would like if they get old and their organs fail. So you can see the positive, why we are inventing these things. Here's a weird one. Pointer, I think, is dead. Is a mouse growing a human ear. I don't know how you lose a human ear, but and that can be transplanted onto the person that lacks that organ. And here's another thing. Okay, we have an artificial heart. Who doesn't want an artificial heart? I mean, Dick Cheney's gotten many of them. He's pretty evil. So we are cyborging ourselves, but for good reason. We want to live longer. What does this drive? We are striving for immortality. That's just a natural human instinct. We fear pain and we want immortality. So let's talk about something that doesn't sound like it has anything to do with cyborging, but it's human augmentation, is genetic engineering. I mean, this is another big topic. Are we going to create a super race? I mean, what will the human people in any country want their babies to be like? Well, they're going to want them smart, they're going to want them handsome, who knows, whatever the characteristics are. But with the promises is we can engineer out diseases. We can literally change the DNA and the mutations that have occurred, and there are on average about 3 mutations per generation that have a morphological outcome. And so you can get rid of those diseases. You can test for them and literally rewire the diseases. It's wonderful. So you probably don't know what this word is telomere. It's on the end. You have many telomeres on the end of your DNA. And this is the code which tells that cell how many times it can divide before it kills itself. So we literally have programmed, excuse me, in our DNA a death sentence. Well, with genetic engineering, we can add more telomeres. Now, the downside is there would be a higher risk of cancer due to mutations from cosmic rays, and et cetera. GMOs are in the news all the time, and that's genetically modified organisms, and it's really wheat and corn that they do it to. And what they did is they put in a pesticide gene, so the farmers don't have to spray the crops, and then people complain, well, that's not organic. Now it's built into the food, so you're ingesting it. I think GMOs is a horrible idea, but that's what they're doing. And some other genetic engineering, which I try to buy some of these. They have glow-in-the-dark fish, and glow-in-the-dark cats. It's fascinating. That comes out of South Korea. So it's going to be a very strange future. It's hard to know what's going to be good and what's going to be bad. Let's talk about a little bit about other drivers for cyborging the human race. I mean, why are we augmenting ourselves? Well, pacemaker, it's not an artificial heart, but that's still augmenting it, and it provides life extension, and it's made of metal and it has electronics in it. How is that bad? We'll keep replacing parts, and pretty soon, yes, the human race, everything can be replaced. I don't know if that's bad or good. That's up for society to determine. But a big push now is RFID implants, and Google has an electronic tattoo, which is basically the same thing. And they said, well, the kids will accept it, and it's just put under the skin, and it lights up, but it monitors a lot of things. And you could see some of the ease that these technologies will contribute, like you won't have to carry around a driver's license or any IDs for that matter, your passports on it. They can do electronic medication that gives you a little dose of a medication just from an implant. Security features, your computer knows who you are within proximity, and you don't need passwords. And then obviously money transactions, everything will go through a central database, and cash is being slowly deprecated. Okay, so what other things might scare people about human augmentation? And here I have okay. It is improving the senses. So your eyesight's going bad, or maybe you don't even need that, but retinal implants. So what they're working on is a technology that you can see a two-dimensional screen in front of you by putting in this contact and then interact with that computer screen. So it's one generation past Google Glasses, which I'm sure you know about. Hearing, well, that's great, cochlear implants, but what if you could hear what your dog hears? I mean, what if you could hear in higher frequency ranges? And men tend to lose their hearing between 10,000 and 20,000 kilohertz over the age of 40. So that's great. But are you cyborging yourself? You want this, obviously, if you're in that state, but you're afraid that if everyone goes this way, what will happen to the human race? So how about strength and endurance? I already talked about exoskeletons. Here's a project that I worked on for the Navy that was kind of bizarre. The brain can be rewired to any senses. So I'm sure you've heard that if you're in say a car wreck or something and you lose your eyesight, your hearing and your taste and your smell increases. The differentiation of what your brain will do, because it reorganizes and dedicates these neurons for those types of actions. And so in this Navy experiment, the diver, and it was meant for sonar, would have a sonar equipped head mount and tactile tongue grid of, I'm going to say 400 by 400. And he'd put that on, and he would look around and see everything, create a map in his mind, and then they would blind him entirely and use the sonar touch on his tongue, and then put him in an MRI and do the experiments, and the same paths light up as vision in the diver. I mean, that's amazing. You can literally rewire the brain to see through your tongue. I think that's pretty amazing. So another field that's very related to cyborging, and again, I'm just trying to put definition around the word cyborging, is neurorobotics. And University of Washington and Duke University also do a lot of this research. So this is a picture of a monkey with, you can't see the wires in his brain, by the way. It's blocked out by that. But he's restrained, and he's been taught to use a third arm, a robotic arm, to grab a marshmallow and feed. And grab it and feed. I mean, isn't that bizarre? The monkey's brain rewired so it can feed with a robot arm. It shows you how plastic brains are, human minds. So let me give you a definition here. Neurorobotics is a combined study of neuroscience, robotics, and artificial intelligence. It is the science and technology of embodied autonomous neural systems. Neural systems include brain-inspired algorithms, computation models of biological neural networks, and actual biological systems. Such neural systems can be embodied in machine, with mechanical, or any other forms of physical actuation. And so they even include prosthetics and wearable systems, which I also worked on. And that was kind of my inspiration when I was a child. I loved bionics. I think I saw the $6 Million Man, and I'm like, I got to work on that. So let's take another approach. How about nanotechnology? Is that cyborging somebody? Some of the scientists working on this, their promise for humanity is you can inject little nano robots and they'll go around your arteries and clear away the pathways, the plaques, and be used in immunology to, destroy the cancer cells and brain diseases like Alzheimer's. One scientist even said, we're going to have nanobots that rest on your scalp and will cut the end of your hair every day. But there are obviously many dangers in this. I remember reading a book by Kurt Vonnegut called Ice Nine, and you don't know how this technology, when released into an environment, is going to affect planet Earth. You don't know. And so I think scientists are really rolling the dice. They got to keep all this contained. There are so many things that can happen. And imagine a self-replicating nanobot that eats flesh. Well, the human race is done, and they're gonna create weapons from all this technology. You know it. One of my specialties and what I study is called cybernetic hive minds. Now, I don't know exactly how this fits in with cyborging, but the military is already starting to do this as synthetic telepathy. So humans have discovered technologies that increase the reach and bandwidth that they communicate, from telegraphs to mobile phones. And futurists call this bluing effect because blue light has a higher frequency, hence more information can be contained in it versus red light. So they call this the bluing effect of humankind. And now we have, the smartphones and everything else. Well, the next step is going to be direct brain-to-brain communication. This is already in the works. This is telepathy, and it's more than in the labs, and I may talk about that later. But is that a good thing? So you can't keep secrets from anybody. There's no firewall for the human mind, but we are becoming more of that connected species that we wanted. So maybe we can have more empathy and love and understanding. I don't know what the future holds, but this trend will continue. The next major disruptive technology, when the public sector is allowed to know, to use and understand it, will be direct neural communication. All right, so let's think of some more applications. Well, I already mentioned, why are we doing this? We like life extension. We always feel we don't have enough life. So, my estimate, 50 years, immortality will be here, so to speak, where the brain can be, the consciousness of the brain can be transmitted to silicon form and stored and put in a robot, but only a few people will be able to afford it, so there'll be that issue. How about intelligent extensions? So MIT already has a chip that the neurons grow to help people that had their short-term memory center of their brain destroyed. But you can also expand the mind. You can also make people more intelligent. Now imagine your child is going to the workforce or school. Aren't you going to give him that extra boost? Aren't you, you can see how this is a runaway process. The human race will transform. There's no stopping it, just due to our individual drives. I just threw in this other application, is mood alterations. Imagine you can literally make yourself happy or fall in love or whatever the emotion is, more awake, more sleepy. We will have that self-control. Now, I told you that I would also warn you, what do you think governments would do with this? They will control your minds, your moods, and everything about that. Now, that's all I had, so I want to open this up for questions now. And I hope you've been enjoying the conference so far. I can't see anybody up there. Any questions? Yes. Oh, he's getting a microphone. Hold on. And it can be about anything. You know my work. So.
Okay, so I'm able to go into consciousness, into people's consciousness in their minds, and essentially see this energy. And I've come across people which I feel are totally, I wouldn't call them people, but are totally made of nanotech. And when I went to enter the consciousness, there was altars, but then there was nothing underneath. It was sort of like empty abyss. And I would notice around them that they were charging from everything, literally, that was around them. They could even charge from electronics, from people, from everything. So do you think that the government has already made these sort of robots that can act as human, but they have to also still emotions in a way, still emotional energy? That way they can go ahead and fit in, and that way they can stay, charged, because if they weren't able to charge, they didn't work.
No, that's an interesting point, and I haven't had the movie produced, but I wrote a movie script called The Enemy Within, and that was supposed to be a double entendre about the government, can you trust your government, and also about the soul-stealing technology. And so I have a scene in there that pipes voices and forced speech into people walking by, and they don't even know why they said it or what forced it. So do I believe that this is already out there? Oh, absolutely. That's why I've been talking about it for so many years. No, and you're right. It's difficult to read people because how do you know if someone's controlled? They don't even know.
I've encountered very few of these. They seem to be the most advanced creation the government is made. I think first they started to make soldiers that were sort of like split and could go dimensions, and then eventually they went just to pure robotic nanotech.
Well, and there's another side to that. The CIA, I'm sure you've all heard about MK Ultra, was a mind control technique developed by the Germans, and it requires a lot of abuse. And with abuse, the personality splits, and then they can control and program different personalities with keywords. And there's a parody, a movie coming out called America Ultra in August. It's going to be funny, but a lot of people might find it a very personal story. Are there any other questions out there?
Yeah, there was an incident some time ago ago involving a couple of women, supposedly sisters, maybe clones, that ventured out onto a motorway in Britain. One was run over.
I saw that.
The trucks,
Yeah.
yeah, were they enhanced in the same way that you suggested with the skin and the bones and all the rest of it, or what?
Oh, they very well could have been controlled, and again, I say I always blame the CIA when you can't point the finger, but they love twins, and there's reason for that. It's deception and et cetera on their missions.
So they were twins rather than clones, do you think?
Yeah, I saw the episode that you were talking about.
It's all over YouTube, then it got removed on.
I can't even speculate. They could have been clones or twins. And human cloning, I think George Bush, our former president, said it's illegal, but that doesn't stop people from doing it. Human cloning is absolutely here. We can clone every other animal, why not humans? But it's kept very secret. So I don't know in that particular case.
While we're on cloning, when you clone someone, would they be grown through the same gestation and growth period as normal humans, or would they become instant fully grown humans?
Well, they would, no. As far as I know, there's no way to accelerate the aging process of cloning. So it has to be done from birth and at the same time to make two people look alike at that age.
Just wondered.
Hi there.
Hi.
What is back in Estonia, where I'm from, approximately 5 years ago, they were really pushing the DigiBox Wi-Fi system, and essentially everyone now has one at home. And then what I usually do when I go to sleep at night, I plug it out completely because I felt that there was definitely something emanating during sleep time. So in the morning I would wake up more tired than going to sleep. So switching off work, but how else can you protect yourself?
Well, the Europeans have actually done a lot more research in this area, but there are human beings that are very electromagnetically sensitive. And you may be one of those. And so unplugging your Wi-Fi, grounding yourself, or then it's called earthing. So run a cable out to the physical earth, put it under your mattress. Don't put your bed near wiring, plugs in the walls. And some of that might help you. There's a place in the U.S. called the Quiet Zone, and you're not even allowed to have cell phones. They have giant receiving dishes to look, at the ends of the universe, and they actually monitor that. A lot of people that are electromagnetically sensitive move to that area. That's kind of all of the advice I can give you.
Anything to sort of consistently wear to at least shape the I don't know how to name it. I've seen some interesting plates that some people use, and it's like a Russian product, but some say that it's a complete waste of money.
Yeah, and everything works differently for all. I think you're a targeted individual, you're saying, and everything works differently. There has been no 100% shielding except under superconductor material, which you have to keep in liquid nitrogen, and you're basically in a coffin, and it's very expensive to make. And you can't wear it around. So all you can do is, there's a company called EMF Shielding, and they have certain types of clothing that you can buy that will decrease the amount of energy that you're receiving. But I haven't read any studies, and I haven't done them myself, of anything that could help you while you go to work and walk outside and do anything like that.
No, I use a crystal called shungite.
Yeah, it's interesting. Crystal quartz, the theory is it disrupts microwave energy. It changes it somehow. And so I've heard stories where quartz has helped people if it's near their bed or they're wearing it. So I have heard that, yeah.
Hello, I have a question regarding just a general spiritual aspect of what you were talking about.
Yeah.
It sounds a bit like out of Dr. Frankenstein's
Yeah.
for some people, but basically I'm assuming we are spiritual beings living in a spacesuit, our human body, experiencing this three-dimensional space-time. Is there a spiritual aspect to this research, or is it just purely material and
Yeah. No, I think you have a very beautiful outlook on life. But I was raised as a scientist, so I think all the human consciousness is contained entirely in the brain. And so this research is all based on that. Okay, one more question, then I'm going to close it here.
It's a comment, really.
Okay.
If you don't mind. So the answer to your last question in relation to the man's comment on spirituality, it seems to me that therefore there's a vulnerability in the research, because it seems to me that one can say that there are a set, as all research has, of assumptions, which we haven't delineated, but I'm assuming you would go along with that you have a paradigm which all research has within which you are working,
Yeah.
and that your results are consistent within that paradigm.
Yes, and so from this paradigm, all of our behaviors, we have a subjective experience and rationale, these feelings of why we do something. But you can put electrodes in the brain, as Dr. Gil Delgado showed from Yale University, and you can make a human being feel anything. But it's so scientists actually look at it as behaviors. We are a set of behaviors and programs, subjective programs.
Right, I understand that.
Okay.
Point of view. So a lot of the questions that you posed in the first part of your talk were related to the pros and the cons of Stalking,
Yeah.
which I thought was an interesting perspective and an interesting way to introduce the subject. But it seemed to me, in reflecting on it, that we're already there in what you're saying, because the illustrations that you give are very interesting ones, but we already have illustrations of how technology has been applied in our daily lives, and we can already observe the effects that it has on our well-being. So as a populace, it seems to me, we are already in the position to draw the conclusions we need to draw about whether or not this is working for us.
That's true, but I gave an example of the individual. What are these drives? Well, if you have heart trouble when you get older, you may change your mind, and maybe you want to be a little more cyborg to survive.
That's a very good point. And so one of the ways in which humanity and human beings is seduced, it is by tapping into, exactly as you're putting it, these so-called drives, most of which are unnatural to begin with. So the idea that one would want to live beyond one's years, or the idea that one would want to be disease-free, and all of these ideas are in fact unnatural positions.
I agree with you.
So
I agree with you.
Still in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, good comment. Thank you. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of the conference. Tomorrow I'm going to be speaking. Oh, what?
Could be important because it's especially Britain suffered from a mad cow disease, And I went a little bit into research of M. Purday, who was an ecological farmer, and he refused back then mandatory vaccination, and he was the only farmer that didn't lose any cattle to TSE in the 80s. And he did research, and what he found out very much looks to me like an open field experiment with neuronal dust. Because you had, if you look at TSE, you have piezokrystals, barium strontium titaniate. You have this sucking out of a copper from the system, so that you have insufficiency, so that the neuronal system is dissolving into protein prion chain.
Yeah.
And then it recombines using the piezokrystal as new neuronal connecting points. So what actually happens with the TSE is the formation of an electrosensitive replacement for the nervous system, which for me 100% looks like the beautiful little nanobots which we find on the concept of neuronal dust. And I wonder, if, especially if you have this, look at this mandatory vaccination, will it force all the cattle population of Great Britain into this experiment?
You're stealing my presentation of tomorrow. I'm talking about neural tests. So yeah, it's very interesting, and I'll address that tomorrow. I don't address it today. Okay. Yeah.
I just wanted to come across HARP, the H-A.
Yeah.
And with the rays that they are.
It's called a.
So the rays they're proposing to send to Earth.
They're
use these electromagnetic fields in warfare and all sorts of other.
weather modification, behavior modification, moods, and yeah.
Plasma rays. All this science. I'm very interested in that field. I just come across.
Yeah, they can create artificial aurora borealis and stuff with that. They're called phased arrays, very high power, directed towards the ionosphere. But the interesting thing is they have what's called beam steering, artificial beam steering. So they can create a focal point in the atmosphere, blow a hole in the atmosphere, or alter weather, or beam it back to Earth, because the ionosphere will bounce certain radio frequencies under, I think, 900 megahertz back down to Earth. So Dr. Nick Baggage is kind of the expert in that area. He wrote the book, Angels Don't Play That Harp. And there are, that was built in 1991, but there are at least 15 that have been identified around the Earth. So HARP is not the only one. Yeah. All right, well, thank you guys, and let's see you tomorrow.